Throughout the series, xxHOLiC and Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle, we learn that Kimihiro Watanuki is actually a placeholder existence for Tsubasa Li. So what happened is that Tsubasa Li ended up making a deal to turn back time, but in doing so, he created an alternate timeline where basically everyone around him, including himself, ends up living entirely different lives. So Watanuki is a complete placeholder. It's the same existence, but essentially Tsubasa Li in a different timeline. As such, though, it runs into the issue, the time paradox, or whatever it is in many philosophies, that you can't exist with yourself at any given point in time. So since there are two existences of Tsubasa Li, the universe has to kill off one of them. And so the universe, in many cases, throughout xxHOLiC, actually tried to kill off Watanuki. But the question becomes, how many times did the universe actually try to kill him? Well, after going through the entire storylines, I have finally gotten the definitive answer, and we will go over that in this video. The first time the universe tried to kill off Watanuki was during the 100 Ghost Stories, seen in Volume 2's Chapter 14. Now for the early works, I'm going to be using the Ballantine books chapter indicators, but from some of the later volumes onward, I'm going to be using the art pages since the Ballantine books didn't give chapter numbers. So chapters may differ from what is actually seen on the wiki. So, during the 100 Ghost Stories, the group took turns telling stories which inevitably woke the dead. The dead violently shook the room in a supernatural manner. Water was undisturbed as there were no vibrations even though everyone felt the shaking, which caused a candle to fall over and blow out, thereby breaking the candle barrier, which surrounded the room and protected the group. The dead then reached through the door to grab hold of Watanuki and drag him in with them into death. However, Domiki managed to use a chi arrow to dispel the dead, saving Watanuki. The second time was during the Angel incident in Volume 3, Chapter 16. So during the Angel incident, Himawari had asked for assistance in dealing with strange things happening around a neighbor of hers ever since girls at the neighbor's school started playing with Angel, which is essentially similar to an Ouija board. So Watanuki and Domiki go to investigate, and before long, Watanuki is tricked by spirits masquerading as students into activating a curse. This prompts the spirit girls to push Watanuki off the rooftop. Once again, though, Domiki saves Watanuki, this time by grabbing his arm before he can fall, and then helping pull him up after the angel spirits were eaten by a giant protective spirit. The troubles weren't entirely over, though, as the spirit turned its sights on the duo, but with Yuko's help over the headphones, the spirit ate the headphones instead, leaving the duo in peace. The third time was the Karasu Tengu in Volume 4, Chapter 21. So on Valentine's Day, Watanuki prepared special chocolate, which ended up eaten by Domiki. Sashiki Watashi then showed up and stole the chocolate from Domiki's stomach, and in doing so, also stole his soul. Watanuki, with Mokuna's help, gave chase through the sky on a giant bird-like creature before encountering the Karasu Tengu, who protects Sashiki Watashi. The Tengu attempted to hit Watanuki, causing him to fall off the bird and plummet far down to the earth below. He was inevitably saved by Sashiki Watashi herself, who had a crush on him, giving him the chocolate back as a Valentine's Day gift. The fourth time was the hydrangea incident in Volume 5, Chapter 28. During the hydrangea incident, Watanuki and Domiki were tasked by Yuko and Amawarashi to investigate a hydrangea whose flowers turned red. The plant then grabbed Watanuki and teleported him to the space between the living and the dead, although he did not know where he was at the time. Here he met a little girl who was scared to head alone to where these disembodied voices were coming from. She desperately tried to get Watanuki to go with her, but he noticed that he shouldn't follow. Coupled with the voices telling him to stay away, he instead convinced the girl to go with him upward via a ribbon that connected him and Domiki. Since Domiki had held the other end of the ribbon, Watanuki managed to transport back to the human world and reveal the girl's corpse, whose blood turned the hydrangea red. The fifth time was the Ko incident in Volume 5, Chapter 30. As a tie-in to Tsubasa, Fei Wong Reed sent Ko, which are essentially soul-stealing creatures, to the xxHOLiC dimension to steal several souls for his experiments. One Ko latched on to a classmate of Watanuki, turning her from an easygoing girl into an irritable mess. At one point, because she thought Watanuki looked at her funny, she attempted to kill, or at least heavily injure him, with a box cutter. Watanuki dodged most of the attacks before Domiki grabbed the cutter and stopped the girl. The cow then detached from her and tried to attack Watanuki directly before the pipe fox spirit he had on him defended him and ate the cow. The sixth time was during the monster possession in Volume 6, Chapter 33. During the monster possession incident, Yuko tasked Watanuki and Domiki with holding a ground cherry and entering the monster possession to gain alcoholic nectar from a spirit tree. So long as the two held the cherry, the monsters would assume them fellow monsters rather than humans. Far into the procession, Watanuki tripped over a procession member, thereby letting go of the ground cherry and revealing the duo were human. The monsters then considered eating the duo before the fox boy, who Watanuki encountered before, spoke on their behalf. The tree then allowed the duo safe passage as they retrieved the nectar and returned home. The seventh time was during the superstitions incident in Volume 6, Chapter 34. At one point, the concept of superstitions, their warnings, and their origins arose. Watanuki chose not to believe in superstitions, so even after he heard that one shouldn't clip one's nails at night, he did so in Yuko's shop. A giant clipper spirit then emerged and attempted to decapitate Watanuki, but he dodged one of the strikes. Yuko then appeared and offered a flower to be clipped instead, satiating the spirit as it left in peace. The eighth time was the Mayuko incident in Volume 6, Chapters 36 through 38. While Yuko was away assisting the Tsubasa group, Watanuki encountered a spirit woman named Mayuko, though he didn't know she wasn't human. Watanuki spent several days interacting with her, like a mother and son, enjoying parks and sharing meals together. Unfortunately, her presence caused Watanuki to grow increasingly ill, making him pass out and cough up blood at the worst of times. Sometimes he received care from the nurse or Domiki, but he ultimately decided to keep seeing Mayuko. At their final encounter, Watanuki coughed violently and Mayuko almost touched him out of concern, a touch that is theorized would seal the deal and make Watanuki's illness fatal. However, Domiki arrived and ordered her not to touch Watanuki. Domiki then prepared a chi arrow to dispel Mayuko as Watanuki stood to protect her. As Domiki fired regardless, Mayuko intercepted the arrow, accepting her exorcism, thereby releasing Watanuki of his illness. The ninth time was the Game of Letters incident in Volume 6, Chapter 39. This one could be relatively debated, since it's not exactly clear if Watanuki was also part of the target of the attack, but I think he more or less was in mortal danger. So, during this incident, Watanuki was tasked with transporting spirit birds from Yuko's shop to another shop. This was done during a full moon when spiritual energy is at its peak. As such, spirits attacked Watanuki in an effort to damage or kill the birds. Mokina, meanwhile, tagged along, and the two played the Game of Letters to keep a magic barrier of thought around them. The Game of Letters is essentially that game where the last letter of the current word in the subject has to be used to start the next word, and so on and so forth. So, like apple to eggplant in the food category. So, that barrier of thought kept the two safe, and even protected, and as such, the duo completed the journey without injury. The 10th time was during the first dream of the New Year incident in Volume 9, Chapter 49. So on or shortly after New Year's Day, Watanuki had made madeleines for Himawari. Unbeknownst to Watanuki, since Himawari shared her first dream of the New Year with him and he gave her the food as thanks for telling him, he ended up buying her dream, meaning it would come true for him. Since the madeleines made their way to Domiki, though, and Domiki too shared his first dream of the New Year, Watanuki effectively bought Domiki's dream as well. That night, Watanuki walked down the street and encountered the giant spirit from Himawari's dream. The spirit tried to consume Watanuki, but Haruka Domiki from Shizuka Domiki's dream emerged and dispelled the spirit with a magic arrow. The 11th time is probably the most notable one, which is the Himawari's bad luck incident in Volume 10, Chapter 59. Himawari had specifically avoided touching and often even interacting with others for fear her bad luck would haunt or even kill them, as has happened in the past. After a while, she let her guard down and occasionally touched Watanuki, cursing him with her bad luck. One day at school, she tapped him on his shoulder As they walked down the hall, that same shoulder then touched a window, causing it to pop loose as Watanuki fell 2 or 3 stories to the ground with shards of glass everywhere. Yuko sent a messenger to Domiki, demanding Watanuki be brought to the shop instead of a hospital. Once there, Yuko's magic, coupled with the wishes of Himawari, Domiki, and Tsubasa Li, along with efforts and dreams by Haruka Domiki, allowed Watanuki to live. But Domiki had to pay the amount of blood Watanuki lost, and Himawari had to take on Watanuki's physical scars. The 12th time was actually more of a flashback that we see in a dream sequence, which is Watanuki's parents' sacrifice, seen in Volume 10, Chapter 60, and Volume 14, Chapter 87, or at least recounted in the later chapter by Yuko. So while Watanuki was on the brink of death during the Himawari incident, he dreamed of when his parents died protecting him. Yuko also recounts this incident briefly to Mokona later on. It is unclear what exactly killed the parents, but the sacrifice implies the real target was Watanuki, or perhaps both him and the parents, if my theory of the parents also being placeholder existences is correct. In either case, they sacrificed themselves, and Watanuki lived. The 13th time was during the Bird Inn incident in Volume 12, Chapter 74. While unclear if this incident was a dream or not, it is safe to say if Watanuki died, he would have died in real life either way. During this incident, Watanuki and Domiki went fishing. As they headed home, it began to rain, so they sought shelter at the nearest building, an inn. After offered a room, they were warned to leave by a worker. After the lamp went out, the duo looked around for lamp oil before encountering the innkeepers again, who revealed themselves as bird creatures who wanted to kill and eat the duo. The duo fled, and Domiki tossed fish bait toward the assailants, which they shifted to eating instead. The 14th time was the corrupted spirit incident in Volume 17, which is xxxHOLiC Rose, Chapter 9. So a while into Watanuki's time as shop owner, he gifted a special ring to Domiki for his birthday. This ring would allow him to manifest a chi bow, not just chi arrows. During this discussion, a corrupted spirit wandered past the shop's barrier fence. Noticing Watanuki, it breached the perimeter and attempted to attack Watanuki. Domiki then used the new ring to manifest a bow and arrow and exorcise the spirit. There are some honorable mentions that I might as well go through, and these were essentially anime exclusives. So the first incident of note is in the anime episode 10, Lamplight. This one recounts the 100 Ghost Story incident, but in this one, Watanuki tells a different tale than his childhood encounter with the spirit. So instead, Watanuki recounts walking home and encountering a strange man at 3 crosswalks in a row. Yuko explains that if Watanuki encountered the man a 4th time, it would have meant death. So in this case, the universe possibly wasn't trying to kill Watanuki, but maybe it was and something intervened. It's a bit ambiguous. The second honorable mention is episode 18, Ground Cherry. So during the anime account of the monster procession, Watanuki and Domiki initially try to escape the monsters after being revealed. They then receive help from the Tengu, who offer one of their flying boards, but Watanuki is knocked off due to flying spirits. He was rescued again by Zashiki Watashi, but her embarrassment at touching Watanuki's hand dispelled her magic, so he plummeted again until the Tengu hit him, thereby cushioning his fall. So it's still, even if that did occur in the manga, it's still kind of just one lumped in time. The next one is episode 24's side story, Reminiscence. This anime exclusive account has Watanuki remember his youth. Back then, a spirit hand chased him near a cherry tree, but was dispelled by salt by a spirit boy who Watanuki befriended. Later, a bunch of these same spirit hands tried to grab Watanuki and pull him under the tree into death, but the spirit boy saved Watanuki using the boy's own bone. In the movie, xxHOLiC A Midsummer Night's Dream, the anime possibly tried to kill Watanuki by having giant rock creatures throw him off a cliff, but the collector is known to trap his unworthy victims in a portrait, so likely Watanuki would have ended up there instead of dying. The final honorable mention is during the Ro Arayume OVA, and since this one may or may not be canon, you may consider this a 15th attempt. So during this OVA, Watanuki attempts to save Shizuka Domuki during one of his dreams at the request of Haruka Domuki. Spirits who wanted Haruka dead decided to go after Shizuka, and so Watanuki entered Shizuka's dreams. The spirit engaged Watanuki, attempting to eliminate him too, but Watanuki prevailed thanks to magic wards and a dream balloon which successfully dispelled the spirit. So, that's all 13 times that the universe tried to kill Watanuki during the main series, with the 14th in a row, several honorable mentions due to the anime, including a possible 15th from the OVA. Hope you found this informative.